It is 4:14, and we're going to call to order this regular meeting of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority, this May 21st, 2019. Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Pullman?
Here.
Commissioner Inscore?
Here.
Commissioner Howard?
Present. All right, would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Any member of the public can address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter that is on or off the agenda. After receiving recognition from myself, if you would please give us your name for the record and limit your comment to 3 minutes. Do we have any general public comment this afternoon?
Point of order. We need to select an acting chairperson for
I
this
see.
meeting.
All right. So
For the what?
For this meeting.
because I'm not. None
He's
of us
not
are
technically the
officers.
chair or the vice chair.
I'd motion to have Commissioner Inscore as acting chair for the meeting.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Very good. Thank you. Do we need any of the other officers? Just that one to actually help with the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, public comment. Yes, Ms. Cooper?
So here is handouts for you. You have them?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So this, Eileen Cooper, this is a brief research on the issue last meeting that we were all kind of upset that 25% increase in brush waste. And
39.
wow. Okay, so here are the things I've just briefly, let me get my sounder off. First page shows that the U.S. Forest Service this past year gave out almost $9 million to different communities throughout the U.S., and here are 5 of them in California. And in particular, one community, they bought themselves a chipper with it. And this is not necessarily the chipper they bought with it that I'm showing here on the first page, but chippers run anywhere from, that are industrial grade, from 16 to 50,000, that can handle everything we're doing. And then on the second page, it shows a community, what they're doing. 160,000 grant. They're cutting down on wood waste, and I have all the links for you on all these things. Go Green, moving into new locations, and this is all in the last couple of years that everyone is doing this. This is in Colorado. And expanding theirs. Then there's what I found was really interesting is that groundwater recharge. Here's something from California that shows, as you know, we are required now for sustainable groundwater management. We are a district that has to comply. And one of the ways, research that's been done at UC Santa Cruz to improve the situation is that wood chips laid out in places take out the nitrate overload in farming areas. They are recharging their aquifers, but the problem is that the aquifers are polluted when they recharge it. It picks up the nitrates and all when they go recharging them. So if they layer in these holding ponds, this is one of the last pages in the handout, if they layer that with wood chip type products, it cleans it. And so there's a huge benefit in areas that have nitrate in farming districts. So those are markets that are opening up big time. I also, in one of these pages, it shows that the price, I don't know if the price of wood chips is skyrocketed. Here's a community, drop off tree, pick up some mulch. You know, a little community in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Here they bring their trees in and whatnot, and then they go over and load up their truck for $7, $8. This is, you know, we don't have to be such gigantic scale. We can scale it to our needs. And the price has skyrocketed on the value of these chips. My neighbor, just when I told her all about this research, she opened up her garage door, and there sat $86 worth of bags from Home Depot. Yeah, she bought them all. There's $2 a bag, but with getting us a chipper that is reasonable, that would handle most of what we need, it's not that expensive. And we could employ people. And if the people we're working with don't want to do these creative things, we'll find somebody who will. We'll put this community to work. And we'll have some new green industry. That's what we need to do.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cooper. Any
Hello?
other public?
That's it? Okay, and then there's just one more terrible thing. Somebody gave me delicious strawberries. 12 strawberries in this box. I think it's 12 or 16. It comes with plastic coated paper, foil with some kind of foam in it. One strawberry in each of these things. One strawberry in each of these things. Foam, blah, blah, blah. All for 12 or 16 strawberries. I don't know. They were very beautiful and delicious, but please. We really have got to think differently here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll close general public comment and we'll move into our open session items. Under consent, we have 6 items: the minutes from April 16th, May 14th, claim of claim number 8438 to Redwood Levitt Insurance for $10,592.40. Claim 8443, invoice 1623 to the Echo Hero Show for 7 presentations in the amount of $6,725.64. Director's vacation requests for July and September, October, and a budget transfer in the amount of $22,300. I have a motion to approve the consent. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment on our consent? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. And would you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Pullman?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to Section 2, Treasurer Reports. We'll begin with the Director's Report for May of 2019.
The Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority continues to operate the Klamath, Gasky, and Del Norte County transfer stations and to provide required monitoring, accounting, and reports to overseeing agencies. Authority staff provide these services without any financial support from the City of Crescent City or the County of Del Norte, and without receiving a penny of taxes. The rates charged at authority-managed facilities continue to be equal to or lower than other similar facilities in Humboldt or Curry counties. You just approved payment to the Eco Hero. And here on your slides, you have an Eco Hero presentation at Redwood School, a pretty active, engaged presentation involving rap and dancing, and often involving the school teachers as well as the kids. And so they've made 7 presentations, very well attended and well received. Happy to do that, and we do that as part of our oil and beverage container block grant programs. We coordinated with the EcoHero regarding the content of these presentations as they were being prepared, and like I said, we're using our grant funds to do so. Also, there was a volunteer broom removal event at the Crescent City landfill property on April 14th, and there was a mattress recycling event, very much coordinated by Kira Seymour and our colleagues with Hambro WSG and the Mattress Recycling Council. And on May 4th, they collected 175 mattresses and box springs for no charge from Delaware County residents. Upcoming, we have the City Clean Sweep program. So the city crews will be collecting yard debris within city limits on 9th Street and south of 9th Street on May 28th and north of 9th Street on May 29th. Both Hambro WSG and the authority waive our fees to receive these materials at no cost to the city, apart from the city's significant staff efforts to continue this program. On May 25th, from 10 a.m. until noon, Kira Seymour will be leading a composting workshop at the Community Health Center at 500 East Washington Boulevard. And at the home show on June 1st at the Delaware County Fairgrounds from 10 until 5, Janet Gilbert will have a booth to promote the Tansy Games, which we'll be talking about under agenda item 6.4. Attached to this director's report, you'll see a letter from Cal Recycle explaining that they have received our correct non-water release corrective action plan as it was prepared by Jim Bartz, the county engineer, but it was rejected because Mr. Bartz is employed by the county, who also owns the landfill property. So technically that was not enough of a separation of duties for Cal Recycle's regulations, and so this report, while it may not require revision, will at least need review and certification by another engineer. So we'll be procuring those services in the coming month. Also, just of note, because the commissioners may have found out about it, on the 14th of May, a vehicle drove off the entrance scale and was impaled on a bollard for a few hours. So there's a picture associated with that. Apparently I'm speaking too loudly. And I'm also trying to forward the slide, but I'll need help doing that. Okay, there, oops, okay. Yeah, we'll get to that one. So I guess you can turn it off. So on the 14th of May, the vehicle drove off the entrance scale and was impaled upon a bollard, so it was stuck there until a tow truck could arrive to extract it. And so that was a few hours. And during that period, a different vehicle backed into another vehicle waiting in line. So we had 2 vehicle accidents on the same day. Very rare events at the Delaware County Transfer Station, but did want to let you all know. Also, I think our staff generally did a pretty good job of just adapting to the fact that one scale was closed, and we routed all traffic around over the one operating scale during that time. And but unfortunately, we didn't have a staff person at the site of that second accident. Also letting you know, we have hired a new employee. Leroy Knopf has been hired and trained as a refuse site attendant. And we have 2 other refuse site attendants who have resigned, including Bonnie Smith, who worked for us for many years, and Rick Morrison, who was under training. So a few staff transitions. This leaves us slightly understaffed for the summer months, but I don't think we're going to hire anybody else over the summer. We're just going to make do with the staff that we have. And that concludes the director's report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Ward? Okay, let's move on then to the financials.
Financial reports, cash in the bank, we have $1,113,217 plus $198,177, which is the last month's rent functionally. So you can see the AR report is attached, and Kathy Brewer is doing an excellent job keeping our accounts current. If you see anything over 90 days, that has already been turned over to collections. Looking over claims approved by director, Once again, you'll see, as always, our major payment is to Hambro WSG for the good services they provide at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. And as usual, you'll see one of the larger charges is for essentially managing credit cards. Increasingly, we're seeing a greater proportion of our customers using credit and debit cards, and so those expenses do continue to increase. Regarding our overall finances, our income from the Del Norte County Transfer Station is basically plateauing. It's a little bit under what we expected to be receiving at this time of the year. So the Del Norte County Transfer Station revenues for the authority are $22,074 behind budget. We expect we'll probably make most of that up in the coming months as the summer months kick in. We generally see more revenues, but we are ahead of budget in the franchise fees. We're $30,606 ahead of budget on the franchise fees. So on balance, we're a little ahead of budget in terms of revenue, but it is a good example of how generally we try to budget conservatively. We try to anticipate income at the low end of what we might expect so that we're not scrambling trying to find money from different budget lines and backfill. So that is the financial reports. Again, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Where are we getting all this feedback? Anyways, why are we getting all this, why the difference in the budget?
Why the difference in the budget?
The projected budget for this year versus actual, this month versus actual?
First couple guesses is there were some major cleanups on Pacific Shores, and there was another major cleanup, a major activity that Caltrans was doing. Those were both fairly big projects. Generally, our income is pretty closely tied to what's happening in the construction industry. And so as we have a downturn in construction, we generally see less waste coming through the transfer station. So as we move into the summer months, generally we see an uptick, and it's been a late, wet spring, so it's quite possible that we'll see.
Was the 30,000 a year-to-date figure or a month?
The 30, a year-to-date figure.
That was the year-to-date figure.
Year-to-date
Okay.
figure. Ahead of budget
Okay.
on franchise fees and 22,000 behind on tipping fees from the transfer station.
One more time.
$30,000 ahead of budget
On
for the franchise
fees
and $22,000 behind budget
on tipping
on
fees.
tipping fees.
And where did the majority of that occur? What month?
If you, well, generally we receive a good deal more revenue during the summer months. And so we expect that we'll see more revenue through the transfer station for May and June than we saw in March and April, for example.
So you're expecting higher revenues in this spring on the tipping fees?
That's correct. That's correct.
Which may account for at least a break even on budget
Exactly.
for May and June.
Right.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Well, and interestingly enough, we're not but behind where we were at this time last year. So, you know, I mean, as far as just the tipping fees portion, I mean, but we.
Well, that's worth noting, because
pretty quickly.
if you look at, for instance, the table on item 2.5, you see the comparison of this year to last year. So you can see, even though we're 22,074 behind budget, we are 19,746 ahead of where we were last year. So we are receiving more money, but it's a little bit less than we anticipated in the budget.
Well, that just goes to our ability to budget correctly, right?
We try our best.
And
sir.
do our best projections.
That's right.
Okay, very good.
All right, any other questions financial wise? Okay, then let's move on then to item 3. We have nothing for closure, item 4, nothing for franchise, but we do have under item 5, 5.1, discussion and possible action regarding first tier maps and assessment and maps of potential locations for the North Transfer Station.
No action is required on this one, but it's kind of exciting good news, I think, in that this is the first time our northern transfer station location is on this map somewhere. And the process of deciding which of those locations is the transfer station location is what Stillwater Sciences has been hired to do. So this is the first tier assessment. Namely, it's just a list of all of the properties that we think could potentially be considered for this project. And so we've already started looking at those and doing some additional analysis, but we are engaging and involving and inviting the board to offer any comments or suggestions on any of these properties that either they like or don't like, or any input that you have at this point is welcome. But it is the very early preliminary stages. Some of the things I'll point out, a number of these properties are owned by Green Diamond Lumber Company. Many of them are old timber properties. Some of them are zoned timber protection zones. And especially those larger properties, we will not need that full acreage to have a functional transfer station site. A transfer station site could be on any functional less than 3 acre parcel. But it needs to have, usable acreage and a decent height difference. But when we start looking at parcels that, are 60, 70 acres, there's no way that we could have a functional use for that large of a parcel. So we would be looking at the possibility of splitting those parcels for the project. So that's part of the analysis, is how easy is that? What are the hoops that are necessary? Is the seller willing to do so? Lots of questions yet still. But bottom line is that all of these properties seem like they're in more or less the right location, seem like permitting would be possible with the right set of mitigations, and the location is about right. And that we are trying to serve the northern portion of the county. You've obviously got population centers around the Smith River Town site, around the mouth of Smith River Road, and of course the House of Hollenquet and the Lucky 7 Casino developments. So all of those areas are sort of population clusters, and try to do the best we can to serve all of them.
Yeah, very good. No, this is encouraging. Glad to see the bulk of this analysis is coming around the town side of Smith River proper. I guess my only concern in looking at this, for a lot of the parcels that are frontage to Highway 101, like parcels around Timber Way, which would be where the Dollar General and several other businesses are located. It looks like the back vacant parcels on this, at least in the purple. My only concern with several of those parcels would be the access off that frontage. As you're probably aware, we've had a tremendous amount of issue with near miss and collisions on that stretch of highway. I could see it getting sizably worse with us taking potentially trailer loads in there. That's why that upper side off of Ocean View looks appealing right now. I know that spot, it's already fenced and gated. I wonder whose ownership that is. Anyways, that one's appealing too, but great promising look. I would, if something were to be done with these sites here, I would definitely be pushing for Caltrans to put in a
Dedicated lane.
northbound dedicated turn lane.
We've already started, we haven't discussed this with Caltrans, but absolutely we share your concerns about traffic and are very strongly looking at how we deal with the intersection with 101.
Yeah.
Towards that end, we are, I have to say, the Rowdy Creek intersection looks like it's more attractive than most of the other existing intersections currently. But you're right in that no matter what property we'll look at, we're concerned about traffic, and we need to look at how the traffic moves in and out of 101.
Terrific. Thanks for doing that, Director.
Okay. Yeah, at least it feels like we're making progress in trying to figure this out, understanding that this is a long process, but certainly a process that under the right circumstances with the right owner could move much quicker if those things fell into place. So, but we've got to get started someplace, so I'm glad we've made this first step.
And again, to review, we will be going through, the next time this comes to the board, we'll essentially have done a assessment of all of these sites. You can see in the table, some of them are already indicated there are some issues and that probably we won't give them further consideration, but you'll see further evaluation the next time this is presented.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, any public comment? Yes, I.
Hi, Eileen Cooper. Just general guidelines, besides traffic impacts to be considered, is that it's preferable to pick a site that will not impact agricultural resource lands or timberlands. Already disturbed habitat is very desirable. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, we'll pause public comment then. We'll just, we'll receive this and we'll look forward to the continuing process in an upcoming meeting. We'll move on into item 6 and we'll address first of all item 6.1, public hearing, waive full reading, read by title only, and adopt authority ordinance 2019-01. I will open up this public hearing, and Mr. Ward, if you would like to address
Sure.
this.
So this is how we enact the new rates. This board approves the maximum rates that can be charged to customers, both at the Del Norte County Transfer Station, the Klamath Transfer Station, the Gasky Transfer Station, and for Recology customers who subscribe to collection services. I'm stressing the maximum rates because as a private company, Recology can charge less than the maximum approved rates, but this board does set that ceiling. Before you have a comparison of what we can expect the rates to change at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. So essentially the per ton rate would go from $151.44 currently to $153.80 per ton. That's for 2,000 pounds. So it's an increase of 1.56%. The minimum charge will go up from $7.75 to $8. And you can see that generally the prices increased by about 1.5%, with the exception of the brush rates, which are going up 39%, as we previously discussed. This rate ordinance implements the fee changes that were approved under change order 17 and 28 for the franchise collection operations and the transfer station operations. And so this implements the brush changes. Next slide, please. So here's the changes to Recology. While the 20-gallon cart still is on the list here, it will be a service that is discontinued. So you'll notice that the 20-gallon and the 32-gallon cart charges are exactly the same. You can see that most of these rates have gone up by 7.83% because that incorporates not only the changes in the consumer price index, but also the 6.12% increase that was approved because of the way that recyclables are being processed now at a different location and using different methods than was done previously. Again, you'll also see that the brush rates have gone up, though in this case we're just listing the trash rates, so I don't have the brush rates here. Next slide, please. And here's a rate comparison chart demonstrating that even though with these rate increases, our rates will continue to be equal to or lower than most other comparable facilities in the region. And you can see even with the brush rate increases, our brush rate is still lower than surrounding facilities, which is a kind of justification that the request for the change was not really out of line of common practice. So with that, staff recommend approval of this ordinance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions from Mr. Ward? Alex, you have any questions? Chris?
Tell me how the franchise fees work.
The franchise fees are 10% of their net profit. So essentially, you take the total revenues for Recology Del Norte, you subtract the revenues that they receive from the prison contract, which is outside the franchise contract, you subtract the disposal amounts, and then you take 10% of that amount.
So-
There, anything else that's subtracted out of that?
So talk to me about the Alhambra scenario that's working with the transfer station. I come in with a load of brush. I go across the scales. How does it break down there?
Right. So we pay Hambro per ton on the materials that they manage. So if you come in and you pay the brush rate, functionally about 2/3 of that goes to Hambro and about 1/3 goes to the authority. And so those rates have gone up, and so the amount
And the
of money-
brush rate, again, that we went up to 39% is what?
Previous slide. There we are. Oh, that's the.
One
I'm
more
sorry,
back.
one back two. One back, one more, there you are. All right. The brush rate has gone from 5307 to 7395 per ton.
And what percent comes to the,
And what percentage of that?
comes to
Well,
that under
so
the franchise agreement?
So about $20, a little less than $20 per ton
Comes
the
to
authority.
the JPA.
That's correct.
You know what and I don't want to jump
Please.
in here, but,
Jump.
but do you have an idea of a ballpark value of the direct brush portion of the annual tipping fees? I mean, is there a way for us to define, okay, so when we're looking at this whole piece, in all the pieces put together, it's this. We know basically what that is because that's what we budgeted for. But what portion of the total volume is this brush?
Yes, I can calculate that for you, but I do not have that in front of me. I would look at the total tonnage received in a year and then look at the gross revenues and calculate what proportion came from brush, if you'd like that information.
Well, you have to have a percentage.
Do we have a guesstimate? I mean, just a round figures? I don't know if that's something that Dave, you or Joel?
1,800 tons of green waste went in 2018.
How much?
1,800.
1,800 tons?
It's about 20,000 a year. So that would, crude approximation, that's about 10% of the material received.
That's the number I was looking for.
Okay,
Okay. But yeah, so
10%.
a little less. But not more than that. Which also tells me that a good amount of the yard debris that's generated in the county is managed on-site by our folks. Because typically, in an urban area, you would find 25 to 30% of your tonnage being green waste and food waste. So granted, our food waste is in the trash system. If we're only seeing 10% of the brush through the system, to me, that tells me that a lot of people are managing the brush materials are on site.
Okay. So it looks to me like if we just look at the average for what came in last year, and we had a similar number of the 1,800 tons, that the difference in cost is about $38,000 over the year. In other words, and that's going to be put someplace, right? I mean, it with the increased rates right now, that would be split of that increased revenue because of the new rate ordinance, because you're going to have that money amount go up by this much, then we would be splitting that new revenue between the 2/3, 1/3, just as we have with everything else.
That's correct.
Guess what I'm getting at is, do we need it?
Do we need that Well, for instance.
Do we, the JPA, need the increased revenue from our share of the 1/3?
The short answer would be yes, because our audit repeatedly says we are, as an agency, we are not gathering enough income to offset our ongoing liabilities.
So we wouldn't have justification of giving back our portion of that.
It's a policy
tipping.
decision, if that's what the board directs.
But I mean, from an auditing standpoint, to give back revenue that is part of the contract, when your auditor is saying you're not collecting enough revenue as it is going to flag that even more.
Yeah.
Okay,
Potentially,
potential.
but it makes up a very small percentage of our overall revenue. from
And it is a
tipping.
policy decision, but it would appropriately have more analysis if you'd like
So-
to go in that direction.
I'm still scratching my head on this one from last week, and I'm going to continue to scratch my head on it because I've got to think that there's a better use for this green waste that the state is essentially mandating counties to collect and dispose of. In listening to those that are collecting it, some are able to use it, some aren't. Those who aren't transport it through a process of additional fuel and cost to a facility that may or may not take it at an increased rate down the road. I'm trying to figure out the incentive moving forward to try to develop a new market for a green waste product in a land that is otherwise as green as it comes and easily to come by waste, green waste. So I need your help here, Mr. Director, to find a reasonable solution and that incentivizes those that are collecting this for us and dealing with it to go after an alternative program for disposal.
We can work on that in the coming year because we are certain that the rates that Rogue Valley Compost is going to charge are going to increase, and we certainly share the value in trying to keep
Well,
those materials local.
I guess if it were me, and this is just me thinking outside the box, knowing that we're going to continue to be straddled with a potential issue and a vendor may or may not struggle with a break-even point of transferring this stuff out of the area, and you got people that come to us saying, well, there's other solutions out there. We just need to look into them. I don't know how viable or feasible it is, but what if we, as policies, generators in this context, utilize whatever percentage that was? If I was to keep it, I'd take that and invest it in trying to figure out what to do with this green waste, that 1/3. That's just me, knowing that we need to come up with a long-term solution, but right now there's very little incentive if they can't find or have tried to utilize this and have failed miserably at doing so. So there's got to be another solution out there. I'd rather see us go into an R&D type process that helps any vendor determine how best to utilize this green waste. That's speaking candidly, Mr. Chair.
Well, I think that my biggest concern at this point in time is that we don't put ourselves in a situation with our partners that we get too far removed from being able to just do business to do business. And I just think that sometimes my perspective is we wait till things become a crisis and then we get on this hyperdrive to get going. And I just think we've got to take measured steps of addressing this stuff and getting it back to a place where, from a community standpoint, there's viability with what we're trying to do. And I don't think that this is, I mean, when you just say 39%, it seems like an astronomical amount, but when you realize what portion of the total piece of the pie this is, it's not. But it seems like we've got to make this necessary step now to have the bigger conversation. Because if we don't do something now, then we really are we're going to hit a crisis mode. And I don't think any of us like that potential.
Previously, the board has discussed, wanted to get an overview about how organics regulation is changing in California. And I still think that that's a good idea. But it would be helpful to have full attendance of the board and engagement on the topic.
Sure. How about that?
I would agree 100%, Mr. Director.
So consequently, I haven't brought that forth in the last few meetings, and I'd be happy to do so in future meetings, and I think it's appropriate. But, and as Mr. Inscore says, you know, these things take a little bit of time. It's not going to be an instantaneous plan. But it is worthy of discussion and worthy of board engagement, and I'd be happy to do that in the coming months.
Well, for years, this Solid Waste Authority went out and we were on the cutting edge of finding grants and other means, whether it's taking it out of our current budget or an increase in budget revenues through a certain line item, and going out and finding ways to deal with waste, whether it's the carpet recycling programs, the paints and solvents, you name it, we've done it. I don't see why we can't do it with something that's green, which we've got a lot of. So I would be encouraged to, at least at our next meeting, have this as an agenda item for discussion if we were to have a full board.
Yeah,
Wishful thinking, right?
well, yeah, it will be wishful thinking to have a full board, but we should have at least full representation from the city and county. So again, I guess my take on it is the change orders that we've already passed reflect the authority's willingness to put this forward. This simply formalizes what we've already committed to do. If I'm correct, Council, I mean, we have, when we voted to do the change order, we voted to give this, or not give, but to contractually pay at the rates that are here. This rate ordinance simply codifies the change orders and passes that on to our customers. Is that correct?
Yes, it is, and for the most part, correct. I mean, the change order governs the relationship between the board and the contractors and what we are going to be obligated to pay them. And then the ordinance regulates basically the relationship between the authority and the public, although we have an intermediary in setting the rates. So
I guess my question, and you're probably already ahead of me, is if the rate ordinance does not pass, are we obligated to make the payments, and then the cost of that increase would simply come out of the authority's bottom line? Would that be what would happen from your perspective? Without
that
coming-
is a distinct possibility.
Let me confuse this a little bit more, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Our contract with a vendor is for a period of time. Is it for a specific commodity within what goes through the transfer station? So is each item that comes across the scales on this list of bulky items, solid waste, tires, beets, those kind of things, each one of those items is contracted for that contractor to deal with, correct?
That's correct.
So what if somebody else, per se, during that period of time that material is contracted for, came and said, we could deal with it better than you? Could the Solid Waste Authority go to that contractor and say, well, we think there's somebody out there that can deal with this product better than you at a better rate? What's our obligation to that current vendor?
The short answer is that's something that we could negotiate, and that there would be some additional negotiation with our existing contractors providing that service.
Okay.
But we have reserved within both of our agreements, if the board chooses to direct any materials that's coming through the transfer station, the board has reserved that prerogative.
That's good to know. Okay, I wasn't aware
So,
of that.
and part of the reason that was done was the idea that if there was a recycling market development opportunity, say for a pressed glass product or something like that, then there needs to be the ability to say, all right, it's our glass. It's going to go here because this is a local business we want to help build. It's that kind of idea.
Sure. Okay, so that helps me a lot because I think as part of an exploratory program, maybe at our next meeting, we could have a discussion about this. If there's something that our current vendor hasn't been able to find, but does exist out there, and the JPA locates this group, there's a possibility that that piece of the waste stream could potentially be diverted to a different vendor that could deal with it more efficiently and more towards our policies for dealing with green waste.
That is a possibility
Okay.
without a doubt.
That makes me comfortable.
Okay.
I know you got to open up for public comment. Do you want a motion before public comment or no?
No, we can take public comment. Okay, public comment.
Hi, Eileen Cooper. Thank you for your query about being able to grab this green waste and to a different vendor that can handle it locally and more efficiently. You're in a quick bind right now, and the rates need to change because that's all that you have going right now is this vendor. So my one question, until you asked it, was exactly the same. Are we bound? Are we bound to do it this way if we find a better way? And I am very glad you inquired about that. And 10% is a big chunk. If we can immediately reduce our waste stream by around 10% or maybe a little less, but that's a decent-sized chunk of recycling that we can have, and it's also fuel efficient and not burning carbon. And I know that the Forest Service right now is looking for partnerships, and that's why $9 million was granted this past year to communities that found solutions with the Forest Service. So there are joint programs, there are grants, unusual avenues for grants for waste that are open to us, that we got to get creative, and appreciate the thoughts and the intentions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? It's up to you guys.
Okay, I'd make a motion to approve.
Well, let me close public comment. Now go ahead.
I'd make the motion to, thanks.
You're welcome. I'm sorry. As I will close the public hearing and I'll bring it back to the board.
I'd make the motion to adopt the authority ordinance 2019-01, increasing brush rates and increasing collection rates to address the increased cost to process and market brush and recycled materials, adjusting rates for the Del Norte County Transfer Station, the Klamath Transfer Station, and the Gasky Transfer Station. Is that suitable?
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Would you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Fallman,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes. Chair, I'd like to further this discussion next month, and the director to take note to bring it back for a little bit more in-depth discussion if
I
possible.
very much appreciate that, and I would ask that we move that to July, as I will be gone most of the intervening time.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we are moving on to item 6.2, which is our 2019-2020 budget.
This budget was introduced before the full board last month, and it has been presented to the City Council and the Board of Supervisors, neither of which had comments. And so this budget is ready for approval. It is a balanced budget, though it does not incorporate all of the revenues associated with grants, as those are tracked on a multi-year basis.
I'd move to approve.
Okay, so we'll open up a public hearing, and do we have any public comment on the budget proposal? Okay, close the public hearing. We have a motion to adopt the budget. Do I have a second?
Seconded?
I have a motion and a second. Would you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Fallman,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
All right. 6.3, possible action regarding a request for RFP, request for proposals for cleanups, vegetation management, enforcement, consulting, and related site services.
So this is a concept that's taken a while to develop, but essentially we have a grant from the U.S. Forest Service to do cleanups on Forest Service property and have been working around how to hire a contractor to assist us with those cleanups. Some of the challenges are that these are prevailing wage tasks, and there are not that many contractors who are ready to do cleanup kind of operations in a safe manner. And so it took us a while to sort of find models to try to piece together what this looks like, and in the process of doing so, we recognized there are some other tasks that are not getting the attention that they deserve right now. And those include the vegetation management at the Crescent City landfill. We've been doing that historically as a partnership with the Fire Safe Council and Alder Camp crews. And Alder Camp crews, increasingly with the more severe fire seasons we've been experiencing, have been less available. And so we've had to scramble to try to do the vegetation management, which we're obligated to do at the Crescent City landfill. I appreciate CURE's efforts and the efforts of our other staff, but our preference is really to have a work crew so that we point out when the vegetation management needs to be done, and then they go do it. That would be a better option. The other thing that we have discussed is the possibility of developing a authority ordinance for authority managed properties. And it seemed that combined with a need to look at both fencing and traffic barriers and signage, there might be a contractor who could help us with all of these things and on a work order basis. So that is the framework that we're asking to release this RFP under. It does need additional legal review from legal counsel, but essentially we're looking for pending review of legal counsel, release this RFP.
I move to approve.
Second the motion.
All right. Do we have any public comment regarding the RFP process? I'll close public comment. My only question is I know in the previous arrangement there was a budget, there was a grant money of around $32,000. With the increased scope, do we have any kind of ballpark? Are we just throwing this out there to see what somebody says? Are we anticipating that we're going to receive approximately the same amount of money from the Forest Service for that piece?
This will go beyond the Forest Service.
Well, I know, but,
Services.
I mean,
And so
so-
do I have a specific budget? The short answer is no, because for instance, on the vegetation management at the landfill, we may be able to use our current partners and get that done and don't need to establish a work order under this new contractor. So how much the contractor gets to do the vegetation management kind of depends on how accessible Alder Camp is. But the intent is that we control the costs under this contract through work orders. Essentially, we establish, all right, here's an area that needs to be cleaned up. Either it's on the Forest Service property or it's not, but it needs to be cleaned up. Here's the level of effort that will be required and the amount of money we would expect to pay.
Well, I
And
guess
that way we would control it.
and that, I understand that, but I mean, I guess my thought is where does this fit? We know the Forest Service piece, that's based on the amount of money that we receive from them, that's the amount of work we're gonna do.
Mhm.
Our work orders will work right up to the amount of funding we get from them to do anything on Forest Service
Right.
property. When we come off of that, the other piece, or this consulting piece, we have to have budgeted something to be able to pay for this if we get it. And
You're
so
right.
do you have a ballpark? I know the hesitation is if you put a number out there, then somebody's going to go a penny under.
Thank you for noticing that.
And I get that, but by increasing the scope of services, you have placed a placeholder in the budget that's going to be able to cover what we anticipate.
This would be covered under professional services, but we
All
have
right.
several things under professional services that are
All right.
being addressed.
Okay,
got it.
good enough. I'm good. Okay, anything else?
Two other items, quick.
So do we need an actual,
We just had a.
We had a motion. and
Motion.
we have a
Second.
motion and a second. Would you please pull the vote regarding
Commissioner
our?
Fallman,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscourt?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
All right, good. under the status report for the Tansy games?
Yes, just want to let you all know the first Tansy games are going to be June 22nd through July 22nd, 2019. We are going to be updating our website shortly, and there will be both rules and signups. But if you have Tansy on your property that you'd like to be removed, or if you're interested in participating in the Tansy games, either give us our office a call or check our website. Our number is 465-1100, and we'll try to connect properties with volunteers and hopefully have a good event.
Great.
And again, I'd like to really appreciate Janet Gilbert for doing all the heavy lifting, organizing this, and if you want to meet the woman herself, she'll be at the home show.
Okay, very good. Last item that we have is in regards to filling the vacancies for the Del Norte Solid Waste Task Force. Obviously, we read the staff report. It appears that we only had one individual who gave any application, none from the city and one from the county.
I'd like to publicly thank Eileen Cooper for applying to be appointed to the task force, and to note that we really do need more appointments. That if Ms. Cooper was appointed, that would leave 3 current members, and we currently are slated to have 9. So bottom line is I think we should extend the application deadline and do a little bit more active recruiting.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Sure.
Do we need a task force?
And it's an excellent question, and the short answer is yes, because we have to submit what's known as the 5-year review of our integrated waste management programs, essentially our recycling and composting and waste reduction programs. And we have to update that report, and that has to be reviewed by the task force. So the task force has to exist.
The task force has been named as the entity to review.
They provide review that then is part of the comments that are considered by Cal Recycle as they review our submittal.
Why couldn't another entity do that? Like
They
the
are
county
called
or
out
the
in
city?
statute.
This for any jurisdiction with a JPA.
Yeah, well, no, for all jurisdictions, cities, counties, JPAs, all of them have solid waste task force.
It has to exist.
Yes,
It has to exist every 5 years.
that's correct.
It has to exist for this purpose only. It doesn't have to meet from now until, in some ways, it's sort of like our version of the grand jury. It convenes for a very specified purpose to evaluate our 5-year plan. Is it possible that's maybe how we need to frame our engagement of looking for applications, is that we're not asking somebody to be on a board that they have to meet every month. We're asking them to step into this very important responsibility for X short period of time for this one purpose.
I would be happy to structure the request for the additional applicants in that way.
Cool.
Just
I think that would
just a thought.
may be helpful.
What are the general qualifications to be on the task force, or what are some disqualifiers?
Eagerness, willingness are 2 of the big ones. Ability to show up is a good one.
The ability to show up.
Ability to an interest in trying to understand how our existing recycling programs work, and possibly an interest in how they might be able to be improved.
But not prior knowledge.
Thank you. But there isn't like an age restriction?
No, and I
That's
just
what I was kinda getting at.
for your edification, it's kind of like the Planning Commission.
Okay.
In that it is an advisory body that could be appealed potentially. It doesn't really having any binding commentary, though its comments are really strongly weighed by Cal Recycle as they review the report. But for instance, as they list folks who might participate in such a thing, they name things like managers of solid waste companies. So for instance, it would not be a conflict for Mr. Herbert to serve on the Del Norte Solid Waste Task Force.
Okay.
Because it's an advisory body, and even though some of the comments may affect or be affected by Recology's programs,
Yeah.
that's not a
Sign
conflict.
me up.
Fine. I
his-
love it. Great,
or-
we have an
Or
applicant.
his designee. He says, wow, we got,
Joel has previously been on the task force, for example.
You might want to come back. It's only every 5 years.
we're at 5 now. I like it. All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate the continued outreach, and hopefully we will be able to.
I'll consider that consensus direction.
Yeah.
Any public comment, since we've already had some public comment from the peanut gallery? Yes, Ms. Cooper?
Hi, can you have anyone from the planning department be on it also?
The short answer is yes. We've also had staff of the Solid Waste Authority be on the task force. But in general, it's kind of like the folks who are most engaged on what sort of recycling and composting programs work for Del Norte County. Those are the people you want on this board, this task force. The enthusiastic people of we can make it work, here's how we can recycle better.
Sounds like the people involved in it directly need to be on it.
Okay, well, again, we are now to 5. Okay, so you guys are awesome. I appreciate it. Okay, anything else for the good of the order?
And Eileen, we got 4 right there.
That's it? Yeah. All right, so we will stand adjourned until our next meeting, which is what? June something. June 17th.
June 17th.
All right.